This year, we've had so many headlines of anger and division that have stressed out so many people across America. But you can also find stories of joy and generosity and relationships if you look for them. They're the stories of the good people in the communities all around us, and they'll put a smile on your face if you have the right perspective. I'm Eric Hansen. This is Iowa. Fly over our state or cruise through on I-80 without stopping, and you might notice the big yellow smiley face water tower here in Adair and think it's all for show. But if you pull over, look around, and get to know the people in these communities, you'll realize they really do care about one another, helping each other through life in the shadow of our small town elevators and our big city skyscrapers. In fact, those selfless folks are so common, we can start to take them for granted. So for the last 17 years, I've been shining a spotlight on those characters who don't seek out the headlines, but do make us who we are. It's an ongoing effort to illustrate what makes us, us. We call it This is Iowa, and it takes us on a journey from Iowa's tiniest main streets to the courtrooms in our largest cities.
Courthouses are built for conflict, which is why judges can't wait for the Saturday in November. Their chambers burst with balloons and bears.
It's rare to have a decision where everybody wins.
This adoption day, a record 70 kids got a forever family. Only Mike and Valerie surprised their whole family here for Harper's big day.
Me too. We're adopting Bryson today also.
Both foster kids are going to be theirs.
They've been with us now for a while. We love them. They're ours. But there's the reality of it that sets in on a day like today.
Both of the Munchkins are present.
Sure, this is a legal hearing.
We're so blessed to have them and join in our family.
But here, it's okay if chairs spin and a judge sports both a costume.
But I have to make it official.
And another surprise.
Let's get a couple of these.
Those toys perched right in front of the kids all morning long were made especially for them. By hand. In the wood shop of a guy who's seen up close the importance of adoption.
All right, so now the toy has been cut to its very general shape.
In 2010, Robert Blink needed a distraction because court cases get stressful.
It takes a toll on the judge. So you need something that kind of refreshes your soul.
So after making toys for all his grandkids, the judge started making them for his kids in court.
And then they're hand sanded at the end and finished with beeswax.
Throughout the fall, he spent 24 hours building 50 toys and dreaming.
I want to hear those loud wooden wheels going on that counsel's table or banging into something.
So minutes after that new grandma gushed in court,
We're so blessed.
the judge who posed for pictures
She's making funny faces, isn't she?
couldn't wait to see his car get that thick coat of drool.
He would take the time to make all those cars for every single kid that comes through here today. That's amazing.
But ask the judge, and he'll overrule that new dad.
It pales in comparison to what these parents are doing.
Because toys will trigger a smile, but an adoption,
It's the greatest gift. There is no greater gift.
that creates a family.
A lot to be thankful for.
Just days after we first shared the story of Judge Blink's generosity, a message arrived in his chambers.
I got a letter from a retired woodworker in Dakota City named Steve Schultz. And Steve has had health issues, can't work in his shop anymore, and asked me if I would like all of his wooden wheels.
Dozens of them rolled into his courtroom, making this year's Adoption Day a team effort.
They're beautiful work.
And now State Fair quilters are following his lead, giving away their talents to more than 50 growing families too. But the biggest change in the judge's courtroom?
I'm going to retire from the bench. I've been doing it for almost 23 years.
The retiree can still preside over adoptions. He'll just have more time year-round to focus on his wooden handiwork, just like the guy in Ames, who might make you nervous as he works. If it wasn't for his buddy Mort, Clay Gerganis wouldn't get a second look on campus. When he was in college, Clay didn't need a dog.
Yep, 2020, no glasses.
Over his years working at ISU's Vet Med College, the head of financial aid used Mort and Braille,
My vision is totally blind.
but mostly relies on his talents, which is impressive until you see what he pulls off at home,
Okay, here we go.
where his passion can chew through oak, maple, and any finger that strays.
What?
Yeah, it's as simple as his side business's name, Blind Guy Woodworking.
Heck with the subtlety.
30 years ago, diabetes turned Clay's world dark.
And the doctor said, there's nothing else we can do. And I can remember sobbing.
That
Yeah,
was tough.
yeah.
But when Clay's class at the Department for the Blind headed for the workshop, it got scary too.
I can remember the fear inside of me and the tension as I pushed that first piece of wood.
That's when it hit him.
If I can cut a piece of wood on this power saw and keep my fingers, what else can I do with my life?
In just the last few years, he's furnished his home, created intricate wooden artwork, and figured out talking tape measures are nice.
23 7/16 inches.
But just the right bolt threaded for measuring
16 threads per inch.
can be just as accurate as a pair of eyes.
Pretty smart, huh?
Since his better half doesn't drive either,
My wife is totally blind too.
she couldn't stop him from turning their garage into a shop where the sanding's as smooth as silk
I feel the imperfections.
and the lessons can apply to all of us.
You got to face your fears because fear will cripple you.
Clay Gerganis will never see his own handiwork, but he doesn't need to feel how much it's changed his life.
You got to have an attitude that I can do this. Else you're not going to make it. Oh yeah. I've pretty much been nonstop since the last time we met.
3 more years in his Ames shop convinced Clay passions can become occupations. So he quit his job at Iowa State and made some big investments.
Well, I guess the biggest one is that I built a new shop.
Blind Guy Woodworking now has nearly double the room, a full-time woodworker, and still all 10 digits.
I still got them all.
He says pizza peels, furniture, and custom creations are great, but his real passion is the creativity he insists anyone can express.
It's thinking about the process and how things go together like a puzzle.
Just like the one we're building as we travel our state, a growing portrait of the imperfect but interesting characters around us. Like the sleepless Southern Iowans who just wanted to help 3 families.
We had no clue it's going to get this big.
Their stitching army that first outgrew their living room has now ballooned past our borders. Next, in Eric Hansen's This is Iowa.
Moms and dads everywhere fight for their own kids. It's part of the job description. But plenty of parents have also altered their own lives so kids they don't even know can kick and rest.
Bring a newborn home and you expect sleeplessness.
It wears you, it really wears you down.
For a while.
You're just walking around on autopilot.
But David, he slept just 15 minutes a night.
On a good night, he might sleep an hour, but it was real restless sleep.
The first 6 months were exhausting.
And it just never, it never stopped.
The next 2 years turned his mom and dad into zombies.
Oh, I couldn't do anything.
You sit down and you don't want to get back up because your body just feels like it weighs a ton.
10 plus.
Before his 3rd birthday, a doctor diagnosed the boy in the bow tie with autism, and someone suggested trying a weighted blanket.
And we tried it, and that was the first night he slept through the night. I was on the phone with everybody. I was like, this is a miracle,
Sleep, credited to a 3-pounder with pockets filled with plastic pellets. That weight's all-night hug calmed David's body and returned sanity.
It's helped us, it's helped our marriage, it's helped our family, it's helped work, it's helped everything.
Which is why, after a long nap,
My goal was kind of just to help Southeast Iowa.
Marcy sat down at a sewing machine for the first time since junior high home ec, determined to share sleep. She'd heard a family was sleepless in Sheraton for 8 years.
And we gave them a weighted blanket. And the daughter not only slept through the night, but took a nap the next day. And so it just made me bawl to know that, you know, something that we had done had helped that family that much.
So Marcy orchestrated a symphony of singers, helping Deanna's 6-year-old.
We were able to get him to go back into his own bed.
Buy these heavy pellet-filled blankets at the store, and they'll cost $100, $300, even $500, which is tempting when you're exhausted.
A millionaire would go broke just to purchase all the things that they say might help.
But Marcy knows firsthand autism can drain a family's bank account.
If you have a child in speech therapy, that's about $40,000 a year.
So the stay-at-home moms devoted her life to making sure every exhausted family gets one for free for their David.
We are trying to help as many people as we can.
7-pounders take 7 hours of sewing. But in the first 2 years, this mom-led effort called Share the Weight gave 530 blankets to families in 47 states and 5 countries.
Here I'm sending this blanket off to Scotland, and I'm like, this is huge. Like, this is big.
Because they know when kids sleep,
Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
the whole family feels like they can change the world.
This is a miracle blanket. This is a miracle, you know.
I went straight from the TV to the computer and Googled Sharing the Weight and found that they do have blanket making parties, and I went to a party.
And Tammy wasn't alone. Within days of our story first airing,
We got just inundated with, you know, fabric and donations and people wanting to help.
in the 3 years since,
It has snowballed. It has snowballed.
500 blankets have now become 4,000.
That's with the Iowa chapter, and we now have a Texas chapter, a Georgia chapter, and an Oregon chapter.
Filled with seamstresses who show up monthly and sew for kids they don't know.
95% of them have told us that it's changed their child's life.
It changes how they live daily, and it's not a drug that we're pushing down their throat.
We don't want other people to not sleep if we can help it.
So they keep whittling away at their waiting list that's now 2,700, believing this is a perfect example of neighbors unquestionably helping neighbors.
We see it in our lives, the good that comes out of it, and so we don't see the world as dark as other people see it.
Just like another group of moms.
In 2 weeks, it'll be 11 years.
It started in a coffee shop.
We were trying to get each other through the darkest times of our lives.
I was 10 days from scheduled C-section.
I was almost a day shy of 36 weeks.
I was 35 weeks.
We all lost babies within several months of each other, and we all had these little girls.
Their pregnancies had all been seemingly healthy.
There was no heartbeat.
There was a very tight knot in her umbilical cord.
And they told us there was no heartbeat.
I mean, you're sitting on this table next to this ultrasound, and you just can't believe what somebody just told you.
A mother's excitement suddenly shattered just before their birthdays.
You're all of a sudden in this exclusive club that you really didn't want to be in.
The first Mother's Day we had after Grace had died was really, really hard.
Friends and pastors connected the 5 Iowa moms who, at first, were just there for one another.
It's not a subject that people really want to talk about, but it happened to us and it was real to us and we wanted to talk about it. So we kind of said, let's start a conversation.
Which is when Count the Kicks was born. So no other mom would join their club.
At 28 weeks, they need to pay attention to their baby's movements.
To monitor how long it takes to get to 10 movements, see how long it took for that to happen, and chart it down.
Then, if moms notice a difference one day,
You've got to call your provider immediately. Don't wait around. Don't worry about bothering them. Get in, get checked.
Their posters started appearing in OBGYN clinics across Iowa. They hoped somewhere a baby might be saved.
Just one, we thought all that work and late nights and conference calls and would be worth it.
This little guy is here because she listened to her body.
5 years later, all the adorable pictures couldn't even fit on a table.
We knew we were going to make a difference, but something about seeing those faces.
It's usually an email that I get, but I sit at my computer and go, oh my gosh, look at this, look at this.
New moms that ran to their doctor when the kicks slowed down.
We had a baby save not too long ago where the mom saved her baby from a true knot in the umbilical cord, which is how we lost our daughter.
When 5 moms turned their tragedy into a campaign that's now added an app for moms-to-be and stretched into more than half the states, Iowa's fetal death rate has dropped 26%.
We're probably over 50 babies a year that we're saving here in Iowa.
50. There isn't a mother in the world that would want the heartache these have endured. But every Mother's Day, they did celebrate, knowing plenty of other moms are too.
So when I look into the eyes of those baby saves, that's her looking back at me. That's her purpose every day.
There has been enormous growth since then.
Now, the homegrown effort has reached 50,000 moms in 34 countries. And this summer, they hired their first executive director.
Other than raising 2 children, my 2 beautiful children, this is the most rewarding, fulfilling, most meaningful thing I could ever do with my life.
Emily Price used to anchor the news here at KCCI. Now, she's saving babies full time.
It is so gratifying when we get a phone call or a text or an email from a mom who says, I was using your app, I noticed a change in my baby, I spoke up and I told my provider, and because of you, my baby is here. And every time that happens, we cry all the day long, and it is like you're floating on air. It is the best thing ever. Now there's a whole generation that's been saved because of an app on a phone.
Created by 5 moms.
These 5 women had every right to close up or stay amongst themselves and grieve together. Instead, they decided to take their pain and turn it into fuel.
And they're convinced if these posters and their app go nationwide, Moms Counting the Kicks will save 6,000 babies a year.
6,000 is more than a number. It's 6,000 babies that we could save.
Because Iowa moms wanted to help moms. Next, the grandpa drafted by a baseball team. A bond that stretched all the way into extra innings.
All over Iowa, dads and their boys bond in backyards over games of catch. But nothing says it has to be restricted to relatives or that life won't throw you some curveballs now and then.
Hey friends. Finals week, students are stressed, which is why it's rare to find one taking off to check in with the teacher.
Hi, bud. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Nice to
Who's taught him more than any PhD.
School going all right?
It sure is.
When 22-year-old Sean Wardian left Idaho to come to college, he never expected to find a bestie.
I'm really proud of you, bud. You're doing all right.
Who retired before he was born.
He calls me the grand dude.
It started in 2013 when Sean's baseball team stopped by Scottish Rite Park to connect with their community.
Grandpas were great. My grandpa was something else.
They had no idea.
We just connected.
He's like family.
By that May, the students and seniors had hit it off so well, they threw down on the wiffle ball diamonds.
I'm glad you guys are here. That's really been something special.
Then the students doubled down, visiting their 90-year-old friends and their wives twice a week.
69 years, that beautiful marriage.
Which is why they did what friends do.
Sean Wardian came to the visitation of the funeral of my wife. That's what kind of fellas these are.
And then?
What an unfortunate thing to happen.
This is changing too. AIB, Sean's college, was dissolving. No more baseball, no more players to visit.
We started a tradition here, and they stole something. They didn't take it, they stole it.
So on this fittingly raw day,
play ball! Reminds me of spring training.
AIB's entire baseball team got one last dose of senior citizen smack talk.
I've still got it, you better.
Like you only get between true friends. After 2 years of weekly visits, every senior citizen here knows every player.
Take care, bud. Good luck to you.
Which is why this is so cool and so painful. AIB was going away, and it hurt.
Go!
But while they were here, their students proved athletes can change lives deep into the bottom of the night.
You couldn't ask for a better group of guys.
Since AIB closed and Sean graduated, he's been at home in Idaho, pursuing his dream to become a pilot. but he still made time to come back here to Iowa to take Bill out to lunch one last time. And this June, he passed along his condolences to Bill's real family when he passed away at age 94. Because he insists Bill's words of wisdom were the most valuable lessons he learned during his time in Iowa.
A state where communities rally together to make sure a Purple Heart recipient's ticker keeps ticking, and where a sister will sacrifice 9 months of comfort so tears of sorrow become tears of joy. Our portrait of Iowa still has more room. Stay with us as we fill it together.
Here at KCCI, we spend all year sharing the stories of Iowa, and that takes us all over this state, from high above the city of Adair all the way down into the Des Moines River Valley. It gives us a great perspective as people trust us to tell their stories, their struggles, and their successes. And that also takes us into the living rooms where relationships are forged.
Every couple knows crushes lead to questions.
One of the questions is, how many kids are you gonna have? I said 6, she said 2.
So when Heath and Jody Bullock got married, they built a house by a playground with rooms to spare, which at times has hurt.
We've been tooling around in here, lots of space.
Friends and family saw smiles, but when months became years with no kids,
It takes, it just takes a lot of emotions out of you.
Lots of, we don't really know what's going on.
they tried in vitro.
We had 3 no carries and then a minor miscarriage.
Investing tens of thousands of dollars and even more tears.
10 years of marriage, this is our biggest test by far.
It was emotional.
Which was painful to watch.
It was hard, and I never felt like I had the right thing to say or knew what to do.
Especially for Jody's sister, who had 3 in 6 years.
You don't want anything more for someone than a child.
So about a year ago, after their last,
We had them over to our house.
Kelly and her husband popped the question.
She would do anything for them.
Offering 9 months' rent behind the younger sister's belly button.
The ultimate gift, yeah, life.
And we didn't know it, but they were discussing this for quite a while behind the scenes.
By last Christmas, Jody's crib was up and Kelly's bump was growing.
It's been really calm until now. Now it's getting closer.
Wait a decade for anything, and it'll test even the most patient person. So that extra week past the due date,
We couldn't be more ready.
made that moment
Yes.
when Lena first met her cousin Dalton even sweeter.
It was just, it's indescribable, it really is.
Oh, big yawn.
At weddings, we often hear that love is patient.
We had faith that we'd get here to this point, we just didn't know how.
But we also hear love is kind.
Obviously, we were close, but
Yeah, this has jumped the boundaries.
After a decade filled with tears,
I'm gonna cry now, but
the ones dropping on this 8-pound, 7-ounce gift are finally a sign love won.
like this whole probably past 10 days, there'd just be moments I would just be like at home or walking around, and when I think of her and what she's done for us, you just burst into tears.
Because of a sister's sacrifice,
I know what that joy feels like to have your own baby and then to allow someone else to have that.
that made a decade-long lesson in patience worth it.
Oh, he just smiled.
Dalton is now 10 months old
He's a really fast crawler, and he's nearly walking.
and full of the smiley jibber-jabber his parents waited years to hear.
He says mama, dada, and a bunch of things we don't really know.
And his parents are talking too, speaking to groups, encouraging couples having trouble to keep the faith.
It is possible to get pregnant even if everyone in the world has told you that you can't.
Because the cost in tears and dollars was high. But his sister's selfless gift gave Jody and Heath a boy who'll eventually learn how to put together a puzzle, and that he's surrounded by love.
Still to come, the frugal farmer who shocked everyone at his funeral and the ripple effects his generosity has created. Plus, the power of a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger desire to change lives. This is Iowa.
2 tombstones north of his brother Short, there's fresh dirt on Bud Scala's grave.
He didn't dress lavishly.
Ask anyone.
Didn't have a boatload of friends.
Even his priest.
He was a loner.
And they'll confess the 92-year-old never-married farmer was not a people person.
He could have said, well, let's go over to Mickles and I'll buy you a cup of coffee, but she wouldn't do that.
A quirky kind of guy who'd climb on his barn and paint B-U-D.
It had nothing to do with Budweiser. Bud was advertising himself.
Just kind of a loner.
So there were plenty of open pews minutes before Bud's funeral when his executor pulled Father John aside.
And he said, you're going to be on the receiving end of a very large bequest.
A tease that would make even a monk wonder.
From wow, elation, and then you have to go in and be a little bit more calm for the celebration of the funeral, you know.
Faithful parishioners often leave $1,000 or so to their church, but Raymond had said big.
How big is big?
A few days later, he got a definition. 292 acres of prime farmland worth close to $3 million left to his parish.
I've been a priest 43 years, and I've never seen one like this.
But Bud was just getting started. 5 miles up the road,
a total surprise.
St. Mary's in Panama got farmland too. Over in Erling, St. Joseph's got more. Down in Westphalia, St. Boniface's surprise arrived about the same time as St. Peter's in Defiance did. Break out a calculator?
You know, you're talking about a bequest that's in the neighborhood of $10 million.
Left to churches in 13 different towns.
Each parish could be looking at a bequeath of $500,000.
4 times some of their annual budgets in one gift. Before the land sold at auction, some parishes planned to set up endowments. Others eyed missions. And more plan to hire construction crews to update their buildings.
Everybody's going to benefit, obviously, through the whole town, whether they're a member of the parish or not.
In life, Bud Scala had a reputation. In death, he earned a new one while teaching a lesson.
It's just a side to him he never showed in life.
Red paint is not the only way to leave your mark on a community.
That was just the way Bud was made.
Now, 4 years after Bud died, his gift has come to life. Every parish has expanded and invested. In Woodbine, Sacred Heart built a brand new parish center and solidified their church's future. But that was just the start.
The parishioners knew they wanted to set aside something to help the community.
So right downtown, they used their money to build a brand new food pantry, feeding dozens of families every week who never knew Bud.
The clients who come in obviously never met him, but as a result of his generosity, we're able to help them.
Without his lead gift, local contractors wouldn't have given their talents to build the pantry, and neighbors wouldn't be stocking these shelves with their generosity either.
And that ripple can impact many, many, many lives.
Woodbine is just one of 13 communities Bud blessed.
It's very amazing that one person could touch the lives of so many people in need.
And he is just one example of an Iowan focused on the lives of neighbors he never knew. Brewing coffee is simple. Roasting it isn't.
We're at about 416 degrees.
But a couple years ago, Brian Dannenmuller didn't even know that.
Thought it just came from a can, Folgers, you know.
Today, every bean of Freedom Blend coffee goes through him. But that's not even close to the biggest transformation in his life.
I went to jail, and then I was evicted from my apartment. Beautiful.
Some believe 21-year-olds from the suburbs all have it made.
I actually made a few wrong turns in life.
Brian's living proof that trouble doesn't have a zip code.
I ended up looking for a homeless shelter.
Which is exactly why the coffee he's roasting is being brewed up across Iowa. The last few years, Freedom for Youth, the group behind the coffee, started opening up small coffee shops.
We don't want to be a coffee shop just to be a coffee shop.
A latte and then just a regular coffee.
Offering opportunities for guys like Brian.
By buying coffee, you're making a difference. $5.50.
Every cup that's sold helps kids who found trouble track down their right path.
It's really about the kids and finding hope and providing dignity for the kids and giving them opportunities to succeed.
Some, like Brian, will work here, earning both experience and money.
It's an easy way to do something that's constructive for the community.
Others, as young as elementary, will learn stability from the classes they'll take here. Coffee is just the front for this store that's really offering a second chance.
I've paid off thousands of dollars in fines. I'm going back to school at DMAC.
Because you'll find Brian's in every zip code.
Absolutely. We're all over the place.
Just a couple months ago, Freedom Blend grande-sized their effort in Des Moines with a huge new coffee shop on Hickman Road that rivals any Starbucks or Caribou.
Our goal here is not to see how much money we can make, it's how many young people can we train and employ and send out.
In a transformed car wash, a dozen employees now work behind the counter, built by volunteers. And in the roasting room, where lessons are more important than the coffee.
Showing up to work on time, to being good employees, respecting authority.
7 Iowa towns now have Freedom for Youth programs, giving teens and 20-somethings a serving of success when they need it.
And I can't wait to see the transformation that's going to occur.
Through coffee with a cause.
And just wait until you see some of the ways small towns have come together this year. Plus, the middle-of-the-street surprise that still has a mom crying. In Arkansas, this is Iowa. Iowa has 947 cities, and the overwhelming majority of them are short on population, but big on heart.
You gotta get a little bit of stuff done today.
Like a kid in a candy store, Jim Scott found his sweet spot on a lonely Hamilton County road, surrounded by nothing but lumber. In retirement, he's turned hundreds of his trees
Kind of a unique piece of wood.
into furniture.
Everything in this room I built.
He's like the Energizer Bunny. He keeps on going.
But even more like that bunny, without a battery, Jim stops working.
The back battery.
That power in his pocket literally keeps him alive.
If I didn't have that right now, I wouldn't be here.
It all started with a grenade.
I got hit by a booby trap. Then I got shot a couple times.
He left Vietnam with 3 Purple Hearts and his insides outside. Almost 50 years later, his torso still confuses doctors.
They knew I had 2 kidneys, but they couldn't find one. And it was up underneath my rib cage.
So last fall, when his heart wore out too,
I wasn't pumping much blood at all.
his cardiologist got creative.
This is his pump.
Finding just enough room in there for most of what he needed. But there wasn't room for a battery. Which is why those rechargeable ones were the only thing keeping him alive. And why Brad,
The guy is on his 3rd set of 9 lives.
Dan,
When he needs help, he's going to need help.
and the rest of Stratford went to work.
It's a group effort.
Within days of his surgery, neighbors
All I got is, these 2 arms.
became Jim's taxi.
No questions asked, no money involved.
Volunteer EMTs
Jim kind of lives in a remote area.
built a battle plan to get their ambulance to him in any weather.
Seconds are truly everything.
We can get somebody there in a heartbeat.
The local power company prioritized his line. Even dozens from neighboring towns
We all have to be ready.
spent hours training
Williams, from Jewel, from Ellsworth, just in case he was traveling anywhere else in the county.
because a neighbor might need help.
That's Central Iowa.
I don't think there's anything we couldn't ask of anybody that they wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
For Jim.
yeah.
But ask around town, and they'll claim he's not getting any special treatment.
Well, you'd do it for anybody.
He's just a neighbor
We all help each other out.
in need.
This is the way it should be. I mean, this is the way everybody should be. Why be mean to each other?
The next 6 months, Jim's neighbors never had to sprint for him. But they did notice he was getting worse.
Everything just turned black. And what it was is my heart pump was shaving the clot off, and I was having mini strokes.
Putting him in Omaha on the heart transplant list. for 2 months, waiting until October.
I'm alive.
When a donor gave Jim a heart even more valuable than his purple ones.
Oh, I feel better now than I have in 10 years.
2 months after his replacement, he feels so good he's traded his gown for a t-shirt.
It says contains recycled parts.
And bought a winter home in Florida, where he'll soon head to build even more community, just like they do all over Iowa. The soundtrack of most tiny towns is pretty quiet. Murray has 755 people who liked it that way. And one who decided this bump in the road needed a spot on the dial.
You're listening to KSOI 91.9.
So their stars could shine.
It's going to be a windy, messy day.
Like the 97-year-old.
I'm Grandma Perry with the National Weather Service forecast for Tuesday,
Who will
January
take on
24th.
any big city meteorologist.
No, they tell me I'm better than most weather people.
But Grandma Perry's hourly forecast is just the start.
Hi, Old Doc Kimball here.
Southern Iowa's most trusted physician dispenses daily advice.
When you get home, why, make sure you hug your wife and pet the dog and have a great day.
And then there are the kids
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
who start every broadcast day with the pledge and the menu.
Lunch today is shredded turkey.
Exactly what Joe Hynek ordered.
You know, you could only pick up about 2 stations.
When he heard in '06, a few FM frequencies were open. 6 years and $300,000 later, Clark County had its tower.
This is KSOI Murray.
And then we got our CD player hooked up to it and played a song, and that was it.
I was like, oh my God, everyone's gonna hear me. Like, not only in Murray, but like in other towns too.
Serving Mount Air and surrounding areas.
Shockingly, she was right.
And you can almost tell we're all listening to the same thing because we're kind of bouncing to the same music.
A young lady behind the counter said to me, "Are you that guy on the radio station?"
They get noticed, which is new for a nearly 100-year-old.
I go places and people tell me, I heard you on the radio today. I'm thrilled.
Because then I know that they're listening.
Which is exactly why they're on the air.
The life we live in these small towns is a rich life, and we don't want to lose it.
So, using their iPads broadcasting from their classrooms and living rooms, they share it.
It's kind of difficult out on the gravel roads lately. I know.
Knowing small towns struggle.
To reach out and bring that community together is getting more and more difficult all the time.
But convinced their soundtrack can be built on community pride.
This is Old Doc Kimball, KSOI 91.9.
I'm Grandma Perry.
When Southern Iowa's forecaster turned 98 last month, she sprinkled in some wisdom to her forecast.
My mother always used to say, the older you get, the better you get, unless you're a banana.
But this year's highlight came after our story reached the East Coast, and Joe's phone rang.
Hey, this is NBC in New York, and we'd like to come to Murray, Iowa to do a piece about your radio station.
Harry Smith showed up, giving Grandma Perry a nationwide audience.
I never dreamed that at 98 you could have so much attention.
And they're convinced this fall, more combines had Murray on their dial.
Oh yeah, I think more people are listening.
Because Clark County's oldest forecaster is now a star.
It's something I can do at 98.
But she also had to add her piece to our portrait, which now only has one spot left. So we'll fill it with a story worthy of a parade. Next.
You'll find community pride in towns and cities all over our state. And no matter which direction you look, every year you'll see them celebrate those common threads with Main Street parades and festivals, all of which are deeply rooted in relationships.
Plenty of towns claim
it's so cool.
They're family friendly. Claim a spot early enough along Pella's Tulip Time parade route, and you'll witness moms and their boys.
Are you being shy?
Proving it's different under their Dutch windmills.
It really brings the community together.
Like one big family.
A celebration built not on the bulbs or the bakery goodies,
You know, the Poffertjes, the Dutch letters.
but the bonds that lure generations to the same curb every year. Ruth Bushnell and her girls are always here.
Then we got a son that's serving in Germany.
But when duty called, Ruth's boy answered.
You know, that's always hard because he was always part of Tulip Time too, and miss him.
She also had no idea.
Welcome home. Thank you.
That just 2 blocks down the street, Sergeant Bushnell,
I've been very nervous and very excited all day.
was home from Germany with his wife and 10-month-old daughter.
So now she gets to wear the little Dutch costumes.
Ready to hide in the parade on the American Legion float, headed straight for his mom's spot.
And after that, it's gonna be waterworks for my mom. She'll be very happy though.
Live in Pella long enough, and you think you know the entries.
Yeah, there's some floats. There's some floats that are same every year. You know, it's a tradition.
You ready for this?
Like where Pella's military boys march.
Yeah, I hope our son can do that next year.
Good looking men on that float.
She had no idea.
What?
Ruth Bushnell turned 60 Friday. Her boy knew a simple birthday call from Germany wouldn't cut it. So he packed up his young family and flew 4,000 miles.
How did you pull this one off?
With a lot of help.
You nailed it. For an 8-block ride around Pella's Square.
His folks weren't expecting Brian until next month.
For most of the parade, Ruth barely noticed she'd actually been pulled into it.
I can't believe it.
She was too busy hugging her boy.
It's gonna be all right, I'm here. He's home. I can't believe it.
Who had really come all the way home for her.
Oh, I love him. It was the best surprise.
7 months later, the shock is still in Ruth's voice.
In such a special way. It just meant so much to me, you know.
Which was followed by the surprise of another grandchild and the disappointment military families know well.
Brian left probably 4 weeks into after he was born.
Pella's surprise soldier got both promoted and deployed this year, which is hard for a family with 2 under 2.
Just take things day by day, and I said just counting down the months and until he gets back.
Should we put you up here?
So until next summer, their kids are getting a lot of grandma and grandpa time.
You see Brian in them and that, so.
You can't necessarily hug Brian every day, but you
No,
can hug
I
him.
can hug them.
Oh, we can spoil those guys rotten.
While they wait for Brian to come home to Iowa again. That's still months away, but already Ruth can't wait for that moment when she spots her boy.
They're all examples of the real emotion and the real bonds between people you'll find as you crisscross our state, if you take the time to stop and really connect with people, assembling a portrait that allows us to say, this is Iowa. But there are so many more stories out there to tell, and we can't wait till next year to share even more big smiles. Till next time, in Adair, I'm Eric Hansen.